When an absolute underdog is suddenly offered a lot of money and asked to spend it correctly to get even more, it results in not just chaos and several extremely hilarious situations, but he also ends up finding love on the way. However, when it comes to choosing between love and money, what does he decide? Duo Yu Wang was a 37-year-old goalkeeper playing in a minor C League team. After being suspended for 2 years, he had taken up a variety of activities to await getting back on the field. Now that it was time for his return, he was suddenly offered 200,000 yuan to lose 3 goals in his first match back. The man making the offer was an older guy called Mr. Jin, and he tried his best to convince Duo Yu. However, out of respect for the sport, Duo Yu refuses the deal. On the day of the match, his team ended up losing 0-5. While Duo Yu's team and coach are frustrated at the horrible performance, the opposing team celebrates with Duo Yu. It was because of him that they had won, after all. The day after the match, one of Duo Yu's worried teammates, Zhuang Chang, gets to his place and takes a peek through the front door. Believing that Duo Yu was ending his life, he crashes the door open to find that Duo Yu was just changing a bulb. While on the way to meet their coach later, Zhuang tells Duo Yu that he owes him, as it was his fault that Duo Yu couldn't play for 2 years. Zhuang assures him that he was on Duo Yu's side and also that he wouldn't let their coach throw him out of the team because of one game. Their coach had already made up his mind though, and had no issues asking Duo Yu to leave the team. When Zhuang tries threatening the coach that he would follow Duo Yu out of the team, the coach simply laughs and is even more happy at getting rid of both of them at the same time. Driving a sad and disappointed Zhuang back home, Duo Yu expresses his gratitude for having such a great friend in him. Just then, the traffic light turns red, causing Duo Yu to roughly hit the brake. Taking advantage of the situation, a man about to cross the street makes a show of being hit by their car and feigns being in pain. Recognizing that this was just a strategy to get some money out of them, Duo Yu informs the man that the car had a video recorder. Hearing this, the man promptly gets up and comes over to check if it was true. Seeing that there wasn't any such camera in the car, he goes back to kneeling in his fake pain on the ground. When Duo Yu and Zhuang pick him up and lightly bang him against the car to at least give him some real pain, Zhu Xia notices the entire scenario while passing by. Immediately recording the scene, she tries to stop Duo Yu and Zhuang in the name of justice. They try to explain their innocence, but with the help and encouragement of the crowd that had gathered there, Xia gets them arrested. While they think of what to do ahead, they are informed that their bail has been arranged and that they are free to leave. It was Mr. Jin who had got them out, and when they met him, Duo Yu was told that he had passed the first test that was set for him. Mr. Jin promises to elaborate on the details once they reach his office at the insurance company. Duo Yu is then introduced to Mr. Yin and Mr. Lai from the Guangming Trust Fund. Collectively, they tell him of his great-uncle who recently passed away and left him all his wealth. A brief video from his great-uncle lets Duo Yu know that if he was able to successfully spend 1 billion yuan in 1 month, he could inherit 30 billion yuan. But if he fails to meet any of the conditions set by his great-uncle, he won't get anything. The conditions were simply that Duo Yu had to spend the money legally and that he had to ensure he didn't own any of the assets he was going to spend on. He also couldn't just give the money away or donate it, but he had to spend it on himself. Having given it enough thought in advance, Duo Yu's great-uncle also forbade him from simply acquiring expensive art and destroying it. Most importantly, Duo Yu was not allowed to tell anyone about this deal. In an attempt to discourage Duo Yu, Mr. Yin and Mr. Lai discuss amongst themselves how difficult it was to spend 1 billion yuan in a month. Rejecting the coward clause that would give Duo Yu immediate access to 10 million yuan, he chooses to bet on himself spending the billion yuan instead. Mr. Jin graciously appointed one of the accountants on his team as Duo Yu's financial assistant to keep track of his expenses and to ensure that he was meeting all the conditions. This accountant turns out to be Xia. Duo Yu is then taken to the vault where the billion yuan was being stored in cash. Somehow managing to control their initial shock, Duo Yu and Zhuang grab bags full of cash and get ready to leave. At the exit, Duo Yu appoints the security of the insurance company as his head of security and asks him to put together a team as well. With Xia, Zhuang, and the newly appointed security team, Duo Yu then heads to their team's ground. He offers money to the coach to rent the team and informs him that he intends to invite Hung Tai, the national champion, and their opposition, for a rematch. Adding the football team to his group, Duo Yu leads them all to a member-exclusive luxury hotel. He speaks to the manager there and rents the entire hotel for a month and offers to pay more than 3 times the usual cost. Later, over dinner, he announced that the investment company that he was putting together would be headed by Zhuang. After getting an expensive haircut the next morning, Duo Yu meets Xia's boyfriend, Jianan Lu. While Xia was proud of Jianan rightly influencing and motivating the general public to not be slaves of money, she was taken aback when readily he accepted the money that Duo Yu gave him. Further, Jianan even offers to put his knowledge of courtyard design to use and become Duo Yu's gardener. While Xia leaves angrily, Jianan promises Duo Yu to begin his work from the next day. Duo Yu then joins the investment advisor meeting with Zhuang and issues an order that investments be urgently made in a bunch of companies that were on the verge of shutting down. A man comes over later to meet Duo Yu to get finance for his bizarre project of land swimming. When Duo Yu unexpectedly agrees to invest in his project, the man goes on to perform a celebratory dance. Inspired by this, a member of Duo Yu's security also puts forward a proposal to drag an iceberg back to his village to solve their draft issues. Surprising everyone, Duo Yu grants him more investment than he initially asked for. Eventually, everyone in the hotel staff as well as Duo Yu's security join the celebratory dance as Duo Yu grants them all the investment they ask for. On the other hand, Xia keeps a close record of the money being spent. One afternoon, Duo Yu graciously meets the hotel staff in the garden with Xia. There, they also meet Jianan, who explains that he had redesigned the garden in such a way that Duo Yu would always feel like it was happily greeting him whenever he saw it. Duo Yu leaves after praising Jianan's efforts while Xia is weirded out by how different Jianan is behaving. She asks him to stay away from her as they are done. Elsewhere, Mr. Yin and Mr. Lai are at the golf course discussing ways to ensure that Duo Yu fails. They are interrupted by Duo Yu himself, who tells them that Hung Tai's team had accepted his cash offer for a rematch and hence his team needed to practice. For this purpose, he had not only rented the golf course as it was the most expensive turf, but he had also flown in chefs from abroad for a special lunch. Duo Yu then invites both Mr. Yin and Mr. Lai to this exclusive lunch. But, just as they are about to begin with their wine, Duo Yu makes an excuse that the conditions and the will do not let him spend his great uncle's money on people who don't work for him. He then presents them with a basic Taiwanese lunch which he says he paid for on his own. He overhears a conversation later that inspires him to have a meal with an important person, as even the cheapest of meals will have great value with the right person. Buying a lunch worth 40 million yuan with Mr. Lafitte, a majorly successful global investor, Duo Yu becomes the talk of the town with even the news covering the event. Zhuang receives Mr. Lafitte at the airport, and after a lavish motorcade, he meets Duo Yu for their promised lunch. Unimpressed by the menu, Mr. Lafitte is further angered when Duo Yu asks him about his failures in business. When he feels insulted at Duo Yu's offer to get lunch with him daily for a month, he abruptly gets up and leaves. While Duo Yu's extra lavish life continues without pause, he gets the news that almost all of his investments are giving him a high return. While his staff was happy about the progress, Duo Yu was shocked. He soon becomes a famous name in the business world, where he is known for valuing dreams and not just running behind money. One evening, Duo Yu suddenly thinks of having a fireworks show to spend a bunch of money and hence buys all the fireworks in the city. Coincidentally, it was Xia's birthday that day. Thinking that Duo Yu made those arrangements for her, she clarifies that even if he did have feelings for her, they shouldn't get serious about each other. The next day, Duo Yu takes to publicly declaring his love for her by hiring all the billboards in the city to display their photo. She initially gets irritated, but when she sees the same fellow from earlier faking getting hit by the car, she realizes that Duo Yu might not really be as bad as she thought he was. She accepts Duo Yu's invitation to a private concert at the hotel that evening, and they enjoy their time together. On the other hand, Mr. Yin and Mr. Lai spill the truth about Duo Yu to Jianan. They offer him money in return for ensuring that Duo Yu fails in his challenge. Not able to resist the offer after seeing the money, Jianan agrees to do what he can to take Duo Yu down. During football practice one day, Duo Yu is informed that he is making even more money with his latest investments. This causes him to take a drastic step. The next day, he calls a press conference and announces a scheme called Fat Insurance. Knowing that the general opinion about him was of either anger or jealousy about his infinite wealth, Duo Yu declares that in return for a small fee, Fat Insurance would pay money as per the amount of weight loss a person undergoes. He urges everyone to remain angry at him and channel all their anger into getting fit and earning money out of it. Mr. Yin and Mr. Lai attempt to convince Mr. Jin that Duo Yu is giving away money like a charity through this scheme. Mr. Jin replies that it was proper business with a clear give and take, and hence Duo Yu was not going against any of the conditions laid down for him. Meanwhile, people take the Fat Insurance scheme very seriously. Just as Duo Yu had hoped, everyone begins walking everywhere, at work, at the mall, and even on the streets. With time, his wealth starts decreasing as people keep losing weight. Soon enough, the day arrived when Duo Yu's team was to go against Hung Tai, the national champion team. After going down 9-0 at the end of the first half, Duo Yu's team had no hopes of winning the game. Their only aim in the second half was to stop any more goals of the opposing team. They end up defending so passionately that even the opposition crowd begins to cheer for them. Despite having lost 9-0, Duo Yu's team is given the winning trophy because of their show of passion for the game and Duo Yu's pride in being a goalkeeper. Amid all the celebrations, Duo Yu gets a call asking for ransom money for Xia. Shocked that she has been kidnapped, he goes straight to find Mr. Yin and Mr. Lai and demands to know if they are responsible. After seeing how angry Duo Yu was, they tell him about having told Jianan about his secret, implying that he must have kidnapped Xia. Just then, A masked kidnapper video calls Duo Yu and tells him that he had until 6 p.m. that evening to arrange for 10 million yuan. The kidnapper then pushes Jianan off a building and threatens Duo Yu that Xia will soon follow if he doesn't get there on time. Now that it is clear that Jianan is not the culprit, Duo Yu thinks about what he can do to save Xia. Mr. Yin and Mr. Lai remind Duo Yu that he couldn't use his great-uncle's money for Xia, as the will mentioned that he could use the money only for himself. But since he didn't have any other option, he would either have to make peace with losing Xia forever and gain 30 billion yuan, or save Xia and lose all the money. Elsewhere, Xia is shown in Mr. Jin's custody. He tells her that this was the final test set by Duo Yu's great-uncle for him. He had to choose the right option between love and money. Unknown to Duo Yu, if he chose to save Xia and forget about the money, he was going to win the challenge and inherit all the wealth. While Xia tries telling Mr. Jin that Duo Yu might not like her as much as 30 billion yuan, he assures her that he firmly believes Duo Yu values people and friendship more than money. Back at the hotel, caught between two difficult options, Duo Yu had decided to choose money and was ignoring that Xia's life was at stake. On the other hand, Xia imagines that he would heroically bring the money and save her. Unfortunately, despite Xia hoping for him to get there on time, Duo Yu does not come. Mr. Jin apologizes to Xia and gets ready to leave. As his driver goes downstairs, he sees Duo Yu's security team there first, and then Duo Yu himself is seen on the stairs with the money to save Xia. Mr. Jin congratulates Duo Yu on passing his great-uncle's test and informs him that all the wealth now belongs to him. After watching his great-uncle's video praising him for deserving the inheritance, Duo Yu expresses his sadness over the absence of a partner in his great-uncle's life. Surprisingly, Mr. Jin implies that he was the partner Duo Yu did not know of. A few months later, Duo Yu and a pregnant Xia arrive at the city's charity federation. Now married and recently returned from their world tour, the couple had decided to donate their entire wealth. Just as he was about to sign the agreement, Duo Yu was reminded by Xia that even if they didn't require their great-uncle's money anymore, they should still keep some aside for their child. They spend the remaining day calculating how much money the child would need from birth right up to getting married. The whole night goes by and they finally get done with their long list of calculations early the next morning. And then, Xia mentions that all this was for just one child. When she asks what would happen if they had another, both of them begin the process of calculating all over again.